Elderly warriors, how do you protect yourself from false domestic violence allegations? I get that question quite a bit. I'm going to do my best to answer that question in this video. If you're interested in this area of the law, stay tuned. This is the video for you. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Linwood, Washington. My law firm's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington state for more than 20 years. I'm putting out these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get the help they need. And I'm just going to jump right into it. It's really hard to defend yourself from any type of false allegation, but especially false domestic violence allegations. And why is that so? It's because domestic violence charges in Washington state have a mandatory arrest. If we are accused of doing something in the last 4 hours when the police get there and we're physically there with them and they think we did it, they've got to arrest us. They can't just take a report and send it to the prosecutor. They're going to take us straight to jail. We're going to get thrown out of our house. We're going to lose our guns. It's a total nightmare. So defending ourselves from any type of false allegation is important, but especially a false domestic violence allegation. And quickly, what do I mean by domestic violence? Domestic violence defines a relationship between victim and suspect. A family or household member is a term of art. It's a legal term in Washington state. Think about it as a blood relative, is someone you're married to, someone you've dated, an intimate partner, someone you've dated in the past, or someone you've ever lived with under the same roof, right? It can be just two strangers under the same roof. That's still domestic violence. And so, and then the crimes could be anything: assault, and unwanted touching, breaking property, malicious mischief, stuff like that. So how do we defend ourselves from it, the false allegation? So my first suggestion, if someone is calling the police on you for domestic violence, it could be a very good idea to get out of there, okay? Because it's a weird way to defend the false allegation, but if you're not there to be arrested, then there's more time for a prosecutor to make a determination of whether or not they're going to charge you. Because on a non-felony case, city police officers are able to make an arrest and charge you instantaneously. So now any way to defend ourselves prior to being charged from this false allegation is gone. So if you have a chance, get out of there. You can always call the police may call you and you can tell your story on the phone, but you're not required to do what they say. You're not required, if you're already gone, to come back and see them, right? If you're in their orbit, they can order you to do things and stop you. So, you don't want to get charged with obstructing, but if you're already gone before they get there, that's going to give you one extra way to defend yourself on the false allegation, because there's going to be more time for you to tell your story. There's not an instantaneous decision, right, by that officer being made. 2, if you happen to be there, you decide, and you're there when the police get there, I want you to be very clear that you had no physical contact with whoever's claiming they did. If it's the case that you didn't touch them, be very clear you never touched them, right? Mistakes are made all the time. Well, I didn't hit my boyfriend, I only pushed him. Well, pushing is enough, right? Well, I didn't, hit my parent, I only threatened to hit them if they kept behaving like this. Well, that's harassment to make a threat. So you have to be clear that you didn't do things you didn't do. And if you did do something, how you defend yourself is to not talk about it. But we're talking about a false allegation, right? If there's a reason why the person making the complaint would be lying about it, you might want to let the officer know, or officers know that. So that's number 3. Tell the story about why they are lying, right? They're jealous of me because they think I went out with another woman. They're drunk, right? Look at them, they're drunk. They don't know what they're talking about. Do you see any marks on that person? No. Oh, by the way, I have a video camera. Let's watch the video to show that I didn't do anything. There's all types of videos in people's houses now. So how we can defend ourselves, the third way, is to tell the story about why it is that they're making this up, so they have an alternative, right? And then I think the fourth thing that we can do to defend ourselves from a false allegation, if it's true, is talk about what they did to you, right? If you did have to touch them, maybe it was self-defense. So their allegation's false. They came at you first. They pushed you first, and you had to push them away. You didn't retaliate, because if they push you and you wait 5 minutes and you push back, that's 2 assaults. not one assault self-defense, right? But you can protect yourself from imminent physical contact by using reasonable proportional force. So you want to, make sure that you try to show that they're the primary aggressor. If each person did some type of assault, the police are not going to arrest both. Okay, they're just not going to do that because then there's no one left to testify. So if they did something to you, make it clear that they did worse to you than you did to them, that they started it, that they were the primary aggressor. And how do officers decide who the primary aggressor is? They're supposed to arrest the primary aggressor. It varies. Oftentimes, whoever's got the worst injuries, they weren't the primary aggressor in the police eyes. That makes some sense, but it's not uniform. It's not really statutorily defined a primary aggressor. It's each officer is going to make their own interpretation of who is the primary aggressor. So let's say we're beyond the point, there's a false allegation and you're already charged with the crime. How do you defend yourself in court from a false domestic violence allegation? Well, if we get to a litigation phase, it's going to be with the private investigator. It's going to eventually interview the victim. And the alleged victim, if they were lying, their lie's probably going to change, okay, over time because the story is not what happened, right? So an investigator can interview the victim if we get to a litigation stage, and then see how that story is now changed from the original story. And people can change their stories and still be a victim. I'm not saying that, but it does go to show that if it changes, that's one way people have doubt about what actually happened. And a way that we would often defend from a false DV allegation is sort of don't attack the false allegation head on because it's hard to prove things are false. What we would do is we would use the weaknesses in the story with a combination of the client doing some things. Hey, client, even though you're innocent, bad things happen. Let's have you do an anger management class. Let's have you do DVMRT classes. Let's have you do something so it's easier for the prosecutor to accept the weaknesses in these false allegations and give us a result that doesn't convict you. Because if you do nothing as the client, we only rely on attacking the false allegation through a trial, your chances of losing when a jury decides what happened is pretty reasonable chance to lose because, the victim may be a good liar. That's what you got arrested for to begin with if this is a false DV allegation. And that's what we're talking about. So, what we do in those situations, have you do some stuff, and then we whisper about the problems instead of shout about the problems in the false allegations, because the harder you push a prosecutor, the harder typically they're going to push back because it's not their job to let someone go, right? And then let's go to one more situation. Let's say you weren't there, they didn't arrest you, and it's at the prosecutor's office for review. They haven't decided what to do. Well, that's when we start thinking, what's the rest of the evidence? Do we have other times we've known that this person's made a false allegation? We've had that case in the office, but a very serious major felony with a false allegation against a client. And happily, one of my very skilled attorneys, I probably wouldn't have found this myself, found some other cases where that same person in a civil suit had made almost identical false allegations against the client. We took what we found there and took it to the prosecutor and totally changed the outcome while by finding other similar acts. And so stuff can be done if you can avoid that initial arrest sometimes to show the prosecutor that, hey, maybe you shouldn't charge this, right? And then also, if the allegations are false, by getting it delayed and charging, sometimes the motivation of the alleged victim to maintain the lie disappears over time, right? By the time the prosecutor calls that alleged victim 3 months after the fact and said, "You still want us to charge the suspect?" They know they're lying in this hypothetical. They may have very little reason to continue with the lie and say, "No, I don't want that person charged." And while they don't control what happens, it will influence what the prosecutor does. So you see why it's so important to try to avoid getting arrested in the first place, especially if the allegations are false. No duh, Lance, is what someone might say, but what most people fail to realize is that the police officer doesn't know what happened, right? And they're commanded to arrest somebody, and they're going to be self-interested. They're going to arrest whoever is the one typically who's claimed to be in the wrong, the one opposite the 911 call. Okay, plenty of people will get arrested when they call 911 to report someone, but more often than not, 3/4 or more of the time, it's going to be the person who calls is going to be listed as the victim and the other person's getting arrested. So important to just not make an assumption you can talk your way out of it. Okay. But that's a whole bunch of different ways you can defend against false DV allegations. As you can tell, I don't script these, I just talk off the cuff. So thanks for hanging in there with me. But we do a lot of this type of work, and lots of ideas keep coming to our heads about how to help someone when they haven't done anything wrong and they're looking to have their livelihood and their life ruined for a false allegation. Again, this video is about a false allegation. So if you found this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get the help they need. And more importantly, if you have a criminal charge in Washington State, feel free to reach out to my firm. We'll listen to what happened, we'll identify a way forward, and we will be there for you. Thank you.